So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Greg Cassidy, and Greg is going to talk today about what I think is a really cool model. I'm actually almost upset that it's not available in O scale. It's only available in HO and N, and it's just those tiny scales. I just wish we'd see it larger. Anyway, Greg, take her away.
Bill, I know you could probably scratch build it if you wanted to in O scale. All right, let me go ahead and bring my presentation on up, and I'll get it into slideshow and get my laser. So as Phil said, tonight I'm going to show you week 2 on the build along for Praetor's products from rail scale models. And tonight we'll be looking at assembling and painting the walls, painting the windows and doors, and a couple of interior options. And as before, I'll be showing you how I did it. You're, of course, welcome to do it any way you want, but this may give you a few tips of what to look for while you're working on it. So if you remember last week, we covered what was in the kit, and then we went ahead and cut and glued our bracing in place. And we went ahead and stained the walls along with doing a couple other little detail items. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was last week I showed you how I make the corner joints for a building like this. And what I will do is put my bracing right against the very edge of a gable end wall and then glue my corner trim up against the edge of the wall. And that gives you this nice little L shape right here. And you can just snuggle your sidewall right into there, and you apply the glue along here. And if everything that you've done is nice and square and straight, you get a really strong joint with no gaps or anything like that. And if you remember last week, I told you that on this kit, one of my areas of interest is this area right here. And that's because you have edge trim here and here. And when these two walls go together, you want those to line up perfectly, because on a real building, unless it's falling apart, they're going to line up. And if you don't get those lined up, it's really going to stand out, because that's kind of a focal point of the building. So in doing that, those are the first two walls that I glued together. And I used one of my typical methods of putting one wall down flat and using a 1, 2, 3 block for the other wall. And then as long as all of this bracing is the same size, you can put another one in there, and that'll give you a nice 90-degree joint right there. And you go ahead and let that dry. Now for this, since we wanted those two corners that go over the covered entryway to line up, you want to make sure you're looking at that as you're gluing the wall together, and that as the glue dries, that they're nice and lined up. And as I said last week, if you're not putting the trim on at this time because it's going to be a separate color, then you want to make sure the two walls actually line up right here, so that when you do put the trim on, they'll line up as well. So once that was dried, I did a little more dry fitting to check how everything went together. And in my case, I had the edge trim here and here, and then this piece of edge trim goes on the covered interior. And so I just set it in place to make sure everything looked okay. And this edge trim should be butting right up against that piece, and this should be butting right against your piece over here. And you want to make sure that this space is the correct size for the garage door that you'll be putting in there later. And you have a choice of two different garage doors, but they're both the same size. So once that was all done, then we put together the rest of our walls. And so for the main building, I put together the other two walls. That gives me 2 L's, and I'll usually build a structure like that and then put them together later. But for the little house, there's only 3 walls to it, so I put all 3 walls together at one time. But then after that was dry, I did cut a little brace and just put it in there. And that was so that if I was working on it, I didn't put any strain on these corner joints, and that brace will be hidden once the building is put together. So I just glued it on the inside of these two pieces of bracing wood. And then I took my 2 L shapes for the main building and glued them together and made one structure out of it. Now, at this point, I plan to paint my building after it was put together. If you were painting your walls before you put it together, you may have already done that. But when I want to paint something and I haven't picked a specific color already, I like to do a couple of tests. So if I can find some wood, like the siding, I'll do them on that. And in this case, we had this piece that the two wing walls were cut out of. So that was perfect. So I tried a couple different yellows and I ended up picking this daybreak yellow. It looked the best and I put it over the stain that I had already put on the building. Now, I call the way that I apply this paint dry brushing, and it's dry brushing in a sense, but it's not the kind of dry brushing that one might think of if you're adding highlights to something such as a figure or a piece of equipment. And that's when you're usually using something like a white or a silver paint to add highlights. And usually in those cases, you'll use something that's called a mop brush. When I'm putting dry brushing onto a building, I'm using a filbert brush. And the big difference between these is both have kind of a crescent shape, but the mop brush is round, whereas the filbert brush is almost flat. And one of the things about dry brushing is it's really easy to add highlights or to add shading to an item. And I'll show you an example on something else that I've been working on. This particular plow was painted orange, and then I used a mop brush to do dry brushing, and I brushed on this kind of gray color, and that gives you the impression that the paint is worn away and the metal is starting to show behind it. And that's the same kind of dry brushing that you might go ahead and use on a figure or something else if you're highlighting it. My dry brushing, I call it that because I'm sort of using the same technique, but I'm getting a different effect. I'm putting the paint on my brush and I am wiping some of it off, but I'm not wiping off as much as I would be if I was just adding highlights. And then I'll lightly put the brush over my stain, and it gives you this kind of effect where you're not putting on a solid coating and you can see some of the stain through it, and you get a little bit of a variation. So once you've done the entire building, you have a variation of areas that have more or less paint and the stain is showing through. And I just used the yellow paint the way it was. Now, when I was painting the house, which I wanted to have white, I was using a chalk paint, and it's a little bit thicker. So I added a little bit of Liquitex Flow Aid just to thin it out a little bit. Not so thin that it would run as I was putting it on, because I was still using the dry brushing technique, but just so it wasn't so thick that it would glob up. And it gave me pretty much the same effect as I had gotten using the yellow paint. And this is how they come out after I've done my dry brushing technique. Now, the one thing I hadn't painted yet was the wing walls. And this is something that you'll need to decide upon what color you should paint them. If your main building and house are the same colors, then obviously that'd be the same. But if they're going to be two different colors, you have to decide, were they added when this building was added? Well, that's kind of what I figured, was that the house was already there and they added the large building, so the wing walls would be the same color as the main building. So I went ahead and painted them the same color using the same technique. Now, after all of that dried, I like to go over it with this Hunter line stain that's called Greige. And it's a mixture of gray and beige, the color is. And I'll put a light coating of that over everything. And what it does, it just kind of blends the shades together, so you don't have quite as much of a difference between areas that have been dry brushed. And it also slightly darkens it. Now, it's time to move on to the windows at this point. And the Tisci windows have a very fine grain already cast into them. For an older building, I like to add a little bit more. So I've got this wire tool that I use, and that just scratches a little bit more grain in there. And I tend to use that on a lot of windows on older buildings that I'm putting together. Then after I had done that, I go ahead and cut them off of all the frets, and I use a sanding stick to clean up where all the little nubs are. And then I go ahead and tape them down to a piece of cardboard, getting ready to paint them. And this is if you're using a spray can or airbrush. And I was using an airbrush, and I was painting them in off-white. which is similar to the color of the house, which is what I wanted to do. And then once they were dry, I bring them back over to my workbench. And in order to get a kind of a weathered look on them, sort of like peeling paint, I use a little bit of gray paint and a piece of sponge that's very irregularly shaped and just lightly dab it on all of these. And that gives you this kind of an effect. And it makes it look like peeling paint. And then once you've taken them off of the cardboard, this is how it comes out looking. I also went ahead and airbrushed the laser cut pieces, which are also going to be the garage doors and the vents that get put on. So they should have the same type of peeling paint effect. And I went ahead and did that to them as well. And then after doing that, I like to dry fit the windows in place and just see how it looks. I do a lot of dry fitting because that gives me the chance to see what it's going to look like. And if I want to change something or want to go for a slightly different look, I can do it at this point because nothing's been really glued together yet. And it makes it easy to see where you're heading towards, basically. Now, a couple different interior options. I wasn't going to be putting an interior in mine, but you may want to. So in my case, I just painted the interior of both of the buildings black. If you're putting an interior in yours, you may want to paint the walls whatever color that you want. I did this so that if people are looking through the windows, they won't be seeing the bracing in place or any of the little joints that I might have made. And later, I'll show you how I put a view block in there as well. Now, if you do want to do an interior, I'd suggest this building would be great for putting a second floor in. And I'll show you how I did that on a different building that I built a while ago, but it was very similar to this one. I just put my bracing down the middle and then the bracing on the ends. I left it gapped, and then I put in some supports for the second floor, right where the second floor would tend to be. And then after I glued my 3 walls together, I cut a floor out of a piece of task board, and I only had to notch it for the 2 pieces of bracing that went all the way through. And then I put more supports on this one and glued the 4th wall in place, and that supports the floor all the way around. And that's an easy way to add a second floor to a building. If you want to do an interior, that really helps. Now on the building we're working on, you'd probably have to cut out this area where it meets up with the covered entryway. And one of the other things that we talked about on the first week was the nail holes that I put in. And I showed you that very, very fine Ponce wheel that I have, and it puts tiny little holes in. Well, once you paint the building, they almost disappear. So one thing that I'll sometimes do is use a watercolor pencil to kind of accentuate them. And I'll just draw a very fine line following where I had used the Ponce wheel to put the nail holes. And since it's a watercolor pencil, I then take my brush, dip it in the water, and I'll run it right down that line, just kind of smearing it a little bit. And then it comes out like this, looking like the nail heads got a little bit rusty and the rust was starting to creep into the wood. And you can take this effect as far or as lightly as you want, because the watercolor pencil is really easy to almost remove if you want to. So you almost have to be careful not to do it too much. And then this is the effect once it's done and how it comes out. So that's where we're going to stop now. Next week, we won't be doing this because it's going to be in my build. So week 3 will be on June 3rd, and we'll be installing the window glass, installing the windows and doors, and assembling and installing the roof cards. So I hope you enjoy the build, and that's it, host, or that's it, Phil.
Thanks, Greg. That was great. I really love that tip around using the watercolor pencil and then the water. That's a great way of emphasizing the holes there and making them look good. And using a
Watercolor
Ponce wheel.
pencils are so useful for creating rust, for creating burnishing, where metal might be showing through. I've got 5 packages of all different colors. You can use them for dirt. And, being water soluble, you can just move them around. So they're great. And if somebody hasn't experimented with them yet, I suggest you give that a try.
Are they an item you buy at an art supply, or do you buy them on
You
Amazon? Or
can. A couple of years ago on my YouTube channel, Greg Cassidy's Workshop, I did a comparison between a package of the AK water pencils and a package of 50 water pencils that I actually bought for the same price at Michael's, I think. And they're similar. The AK ones are a little bit better, and they're also aimed towards modelers. They have, three different shades of rust and five different shades of dirt and stuff, whereas the 50 pack has pink, purple, bright red,
yep.
blue, all those colors. But it had enough colors that I could compare a couple, and it was pretty much apples to apples. So you can find them at other places, but just like so many other things in the hobby industry, the AK ones are specialized for the colors that we usually go after.
It's kind of a pencil version of pan pastels. That's really
Mhm.
interesting. We should put a link for that at some point in the chat. So that was great, Greg.
Or
Any
someday I'll
question?
come back and do a little clinic on it.
Excellent. Any questions for Greg?
I don't have a question, but I do want to ask him
Mhm.
about his when you were using Liquitex, was that photo flow aid?
Yeah, Flow Aid, it's something that you can mix in, and I'll tend to use it primarily with Craftsman paints because, they're usually a little thicker than the hobby paints that we like to work with. But it depends on what paint and what color you get. There's really no rhyme or reason as to why some are thicker than others. But Flow Aid will thin it out and allow it to flow better. Whether you want to put on a heavy coat or whether you want to do some type of dry brushing like I was doing.
That's similar to why I use Kodak Photo Flow because that's what I have, and I don't have the Liquitex.
Yeah, it's a very similar product. And in
So
fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they're
HO peeled
identical.
paint, HO peeled paint is hard to do, and yours was excellent on that white structure.
Yeah, well, it ends up being easy to do just using those steps.
But you did an excellent job on that because it really looks like good peeled paint for that scale.
Well, thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.
Oh, excellent. Any other questions for Greg before we move on?
Just a comment that the close-up pictures were great. You did a super job with those.
Well, thank you, bud.
Absolutely. That was a great build. Greg, thanks very much. And we'll look forward
Still
to the
have 3 weeks
next
to go.
3 weeks to go. We'll start after the My Build next week. So